If you agree that a man who bled for this country should never have to explain his worth at a metal detector, like and subscribe, because this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that sometimes respect doesn't arrive with protocol. It walks in with a leash and eyes that have seen war. They found the harness in the bottom of a TSA security bin, tucked under a coat someone had tossed aside in a rush, tin canvas, worn leather trim, and a single silver tag on the side that read, ASH, Retired Military K9, do not separate. But no one noticed that until after it happened. The part people remember is the waiting, the glances, the way he stood there, barely leaning on his cane, like his bones had forgotten how to beg for comfort. And the dog, calm, quiet, perfectly still, until they touched him. But we'll get there. First, understand this. What happened at Gate 3 wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't about security codes or flag systems or someone checking the wrong box on a form. It started much earlier, 10 minutes before touchdown at Dulles International Airport, when Master Sergeant Marcus Hale ran his hand along Ash's neck and whispered, "Almost home, boy." Marcus had flown halfway across the world from a NATO summit in Stuttgart, where he'd been asked, reluctantly, to speak on post-service K9 integration. He never liked the spotlight, never needed applause. But when they called, he went. Always did. That's the thing about certain kinds of men. They don't stop serving just because the uniform comes off. And Ash never stopped guarding. Even now, 12 years after their last deployment together, he walked at Marcus's side like the leash was ceremonial. Which, in truth, it was. Ash didn't need restraint. He needed space, dignity, and exactly 2 feet of clearance on all sides. That's what the doctors told Marcus after the incident in Kandahar. The blast that took half the squad would have taken him too, if not for Ash. They said the dog shielded him with his body. They said that's not something they're trained to do. But Ash did it anyway. So when they landed in DC and Marcus approached the customs checkpoint, documents in hand, service dog comm at his heel, he didn't expect a problem. Not here. Not at home. Dog can't come through here without secondary screening, said the customs officer. Officer Brett Kessler, badge glinting beneath sterile terminal lights, his tone clipped with performative authority. Marcus handed over the DoD paperwork, worn at the edges, laminated and marked with clearance codes only 5 handlers in the country still carried. Kessler barely glanced at it. This expired, he muttered. It hadn't. Not technically. It fell under continuing clearance, the kind veterans with live trauma dogs carry for life. But Kessler wasn't reading. He was judging. Step aside, he barked, motioning toward a line of plastic benches near the back wall. We'll figure out what to do with the animal. Marcus didn't move at first. Not out of defiance, but disbelief. He looked down at Ash, then back at the line of people watching, some curious, some avoiding eye contact like silence was a shield. He nodded once. He's not an animal, Marcus said calmly. He's a soldier. Kessler smirked. Sure, and I'm a 5-star general. They laughed at that, Kessler and another agent who came over to help. The same way people laugh at war movies without asking who paid for the script. Marcus sat, Ash at his side, tail still, ears forward. Trained to monitor pulse and respiration. Trained to detect adrenaline spikes. Marcus gripped the bench with one hand, the other resting lightly on Ash's back, grounding himself. The agents ran scans. Asked if Ash had been vaccinated. Searched his harness. Tugged at the Velcro. Ash didn't flinch, but Marcus could feel the dog tensing. The harness was his uniform. Touching it without permission was like stripping rake. You need to stop, Marcus said, still even, still steady. But the agents were enjoying the show. One even mind barking. Bet he barks in Morse code, he joked. Another chuckled. Probably writes field reports in paw print. A couple of travelers laughed, unsure what else to do. Nobody offered help. Nobody asked Marcus who he was, or what the patches on Ash's vest meant. Black and crimson, worn thin, the kind awarded only in the field, only for acts that never make the press. That's the thing about silence. It swallows truth if you let it. And Marcus was good at silence. Had been since the jungle. Since the sand. Since the frostbite in Kunar province that left his right leg half dead. Since Ash saved him from a landmine and dragged him back 300 meters with his own flank shredded. He didn't need to explain himself. Didn't need validation. But Ash had earned better. And so Marcus waited. Not for an apology. Not even for dignity. Just for someone, anyone, To remember that the tag on Ash's vest wasn't decorative. It was an oath. Meanwhile, the agents debated how to detain the dog without triggering aggression. They called for a secondary team, debated whether to place Ash in a crate or restrain him at a post. Marcus said nothing, just whispered to Ash, low and slow, "Stay with me." But outside the terminal, the air was shifting. Somewhere near the tarmac, a black Suburban had just crossed the outer security checkpoint. A call had been made, not by Marcus, not by anyone watching, but by someone who saw something the agents didn't. And as that Suburban moved closer to Gate 3, the building would start to remember, not just who Marcus Hale was, but what Ash had done. What happens next? It's not in the manuals, not in the training binders or the laminated binders marked Service Animal Protocol. Because what walked into that terminal was more than clearance and more than command. It was something the agents had never dealt with before. Respect with a badge. And it was coming. The bench they gave him was cold, metal, and bolted to the tile like they were afraid it might grow legs and leave. Marcus sat on the edge, back straight, cane resting between his knees, and Ash at his side. Silent, eyes forward, muscles coiled not in fear but in discipline. He wasn't trained to bark or bite. He was trained to wait. And so, they waited. The agents across the room busied themselves with forms, radio chatter, and unnecessary authority. One walked past again, this time filming Ash with his phone, snickering. "Guess we'll see if this hero sheds when he's nervous." Another agent laughed from behind a counter. Marcus said nothing. His silence wasn't weakness. It was the restraint of a man who knew exactly how loud words could echo when they were the wrong ones. That silence had followed him through 6 countries and 3 wars. It had stitched itself into the seams of his uniform, hardened into the medals he never wore, and buried itself inside every scar no one ever asked about. Ash nudged his knee once, sensing the spike in heart rate. Marcus gave a soft click with his tongue, and Ash returned to perfect stillness. But he was watching, always watching. What the agents didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that Ash wasn't just a service dog. He was a combat veteran. He had clearance, credentials, and a file that was still redacted in parts even Marcus hadn't seen. That harness they'd tossed on the floor? It had seen more action than half the personnel in that building combined. Ash had tracked hostiles, detected IEDs, located wounded soldiers in collapsed buildings. Once, he pulled a child from a burning convoy in Fallujah. Once, he took shrapnel that should have torn Marcus apart. And now they wanted to put him in a crate. The kind used for animals, luggage, or suspicion. Marcus could feel the heat in his chest, not anger, but memory. The kind that sits just beneath the skin and reminds you what it cost. Every now and then, someone would walk by and glance at him, curiosity flickering behind tourist exhaustion. Some would linger for half a second on Ash's scarred flank or the stitched badge near his collar that read K9, retired with honors. Most just kept walking. That's what they do. They keep walking. Until someone doesn't. A young woman from the airline staff slowed down as she passed. She looked at Marcus, looked at Ash, and hesitated. "Are they with you?" she asked, voice low. Marcus nodded. "They're trying to process his status." Her brow furrowed. "But he's got the vest. That patch alone means they're not reading the patch," he said quietly. "They're reading me." And that was the truth of it. Not that the credentials were wrong. Not that the paperwork was outdated. But that Marcus looked like someone they could dismiss. Gray-haired, limping, quiet, disposable. He didn't look like a threat. And that's exactly why they thought they could treat him like one. Meanwhile, behind a frosted window on the 2nd level of the terminal, a call was being transferred. Then transferred again. From one desk to another. Until it landed where it needed to. A name was spoken. Then a second name. And then a third, Ash. Within minutes, the rhythm of the airport shifted. It was subtle at first. Radios went silent. A desk phone stopped ringing mid-dial. One of the supervisors in the TSA control room rose from his seat, brow furrowed. "We have who in holding?" he asked. Across the tarmac, a black Suburban pulled to a stop in a restricted access lane. 2 men in suits stepped out first, scanning the terminal entrance. Then the door opened again. Polished boots hit the pavement. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Clara Ellison, stepped onto the curb without a word. She didn't wear a name tag. She didn't need to. Her presence announced itself. Inside the terminal, Officer Kessler had returned to Marcus with a clipboard, smirking like a man who thought he'd just won a game no one else knew they were playing. "I've got some options," he said, too loud for the setting. "We can call animal control for a safe transfer, where you can sign a release form saying you brought the dog and knowing he wasn't cleared. Your choice." Marcus didn't flinch. He glanced at Ash. "Neither, sir," Kessler replied, with mock patience. "You don't get to dictate terms. You're not in command anymore." Marcus met his eyes, level and flat. "That's the thing about command," he said softly. "You don't lose it just because someone forgot how to recognize it." Before Kessler could reply, his radio cracked once. A stammered voice said, Terminal Gate 3, we've got a confirmed VIP incoming. High level." Kessler frowned. "What VIP?" But the agent at the next desk had gone pale. "Sir," he whispered, "you might want to stand up straight." And that's when she walked in. Clara Ellison. No entourage. No press. Just purpose. Her eyes locked on Marcus from across the room, and without breaking stride, she approached. Kessler started to speak, but faltered. She passed him like air. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't pull rank. She simply stopped in front of Ash, knelt, and ran her hand gently along the dog's head. Ash didn't move, didn't bark, just acknowledged her with a soft blink. "It's been too long," she said, and Marcus's eyes softened. "Madam Secretary," he said with a quiet nod. She stood and turned to the agents. Her voice was calm. "Cold. Who detained him?" she asked. No one answered. "That dog," she continued, "has 200 logged field hours in free war zones. He's credited with saving 12 lives. His ID is stored in our secure animal database. The only reason your systems didn't verify it is because you've never handled a hero like him before." Then she turned to Marcus. "I'm sorry this happened." He nodded once, emotion flickering beneath years of practiced stillness. Clara looked back at the room. "This is not a protocol problem. This is a recognition problem, and I'm here to fix it." The agents stepped back. The line behind them was quiet now. Cameras were being lifted, but no one spoke. And Ash remained still, eyes trained on Marcus, waiting for the next move. As always, for a long moment, no one moved. The Secretary of Homeland Security stood in the middle of the terminal, her heels still wet from the rain outside, her eyes fixed on Ash like she saw something the others couldn't, because she did. Clara Ellison didn't come with press crews or handshakes. She came because someone called in a name that never stopped carrying weight, even years after the headlines faded. Master Sergeant Marcus Hale. Handler, K9 Ash. Clearance, top secret. Status, untouchable. "Get me the supervisor," she said calmly, glancing at the TSA agents whose spines had suddenly gone stiff. One of them, unsure whether to salute or flee, muttered, "Yes, ma'am," and sprinted toward the office. Kessler stood frozen, clipboard limp at his side. No more smirking, no more jokes. Just a man who realized too late that he hadn't detained a dog. He'd disrespected a warrior with a leash. Clara turned to Marcus. "I wish this hadn't happened," she said. Marcus gave a slow nod. "Wish that every week," he replied quietly. "Wish Ash didn't flinch when he hears static. Wish my wife didn't check the locks 3 times before bed." He didn't say it with anger. Just truth. Raw. Undeniable. Clara stepped back and lifted a hand to one of her aides. A small wooden case was brought forward, velvet-lined, and sealed with a metal latch. "We were going to ship this," she said, "but I think it belongs here now." She opened the box. Inside sat a folded American flag, a citation plaque, and a newly issued Valor Ribbon for non-human service members, a decoration so rare it had only been awarded 6 times in U.S. history. Clara knelt beside Ash and affixed the ribbon gently to his harness. It glinted beneath the terminal lights like a whisper of something sacred. "For service above and beyond the call of instinct," she said. Ash didn't react. He simply accepted it, stoic and still. Because he wasn't just a dog. He was a soldier. The crowd, once murmuring, was now silent. Even the line at the metal detectors had stalled. A child holding her mother's hand asked in a whisper, "Is that a hero, Mommy?" The woman nodded, eyes misting. "Yes, the quiet kind." Then Clara stood, turned, and faced the agents who'd orchestrated the entire mess. "Do you know what makes this country strong?" she asked, voice low but carrying. "It's not our systems. It's not our scanners. It's not checklists or chain of command. It's people like that man." She pointed at Marcus. "And animals like that dog." Kessler opened his mouth, as if to speak, but no words came. Clara didn't give him the satisfaction of a stare. You don't get to talk right now, she said. You get to reflect. Her gaze swept the terminal. Every person in uniform, she continued, whether 2 legs or 4, deserves the benefit of belief. We ask them to face the unimaginable, and when they come home, we give them suspicion instead of thanks. That ends today. A TSA supervisor rushed forward, stammering apologies, hands wringing a printout of Ash's service clearance. We verified his ID. That the delay was due to a system flag. The animal was not registered in. No, Clara interrupted. The delay was due to ego. And you better believe that will be noted. Then she walked back to Marcus, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered something the cameras couldn't catch. But his eyes closed for half a second, and in that flicker of silence, a man who hadn't slept through the night in years found peace, just for a moment. Clara turned again and gestured to the checkpoint. Escort them out, she ordered. Not out of the terminal. Out of this moment. Past the embarrassment. Past the disrespect. Into the space where honor still stood tall. An agent moved to guide them, but Clara raised her hand. He doesn't need an escort. He's led more men home than you'll ever meet. Just open the gate. And they did. Marcus rose slowly, wincing as his knee cracked. Ash stood with him. No command needed. The crowd parted. People saluted. A few clapped quietly. One man removed his cap. A woman wiped tears from her eyes. And together, Marcus and Ash walked. Not with urgency, not with pride, but with the steady, practiced pace of those who've marched behind caskets and never let the flag touch the ground. Near the entrance, a little boy stepped out of line and held up a small plastic dog tag from a souvenir stand. For him, the boy said. Marcus bent slightly and took it, nodding once. Thank you, soldier, he whispered. The boy stood straighter. Kessler and the others stood off to the side, their uniforms suddenly too loud, their badges too light. No reprimand could match what silence now echoed between them. They hadn't just mishandled a passenger. They'd misjudged a legacy. Later that evening, the terminal issued a formal apology. A press release was drafted. A sensitivity protocol was initiated. But none of that mattered to Marcus. He didn't care about headlines. He cared that Ash hadn't been caged. That for once, the world remembered who they were before it forgot what it owed. That night, in a small motel off the highway, Marcus unpacked Ash's food, removed the harness, and folded the ribbon neatly beside the bed. He poured 2 glasses of water, one for him, one for Ash, and sat down slowly. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was earned. Ash lay at his feet, eyes already closed. Tomorrow they'd drive south. No ceremony, no fanfare, just 2 veterans going home. And if you ever pass through Gate 3 at Dulles, you might notice a small plaque near the wall. No headline, no lights. Just a few words etched in brushed steel. For those who waited in silence and still served with honor. And next to it, faint but permanent. ASH, Combat K9, Guardian, Friend. Because some heroes don't need rank. They just need to be seen.